I think I'm going to flip this whole thing. I don't know any of you if you know, but this morning a guy, George Halbert, was here, and he's one of the best benchers of all time. And I remember when I was coming up, and he benched 733, and my weight class was 100 kilo, 220, and it just absolutely broke me. I saw it and I'm like, how? And then Chuck Vogelpool, who was my biggest competition, he squats 1,000. And we had just competed against each other, and we both did in the 800s. And now he's at 1,000, like 2 months later. And so those two things happened like back to back. And I remember just dropping my head and being like, what am I going to do? I was only squatting 8, and I was only benching in the 5s. And then just something flipped in my brain. I got the chance to go to North Georgia Barbell in Atlanta. And so there's like Steve Goggins, I don't know, the first man who ever squatted 1,100. He could also deadlift 881. I got a chance to train with them. And so every single day I was training with Scott Albano, who was a bench-only guy who was in the 700s, and my weight class. So then all of a sudden, within weeks, we're tit for tat, just because it was the new norm, and then you see Goggins squatting 1,000 daily. And so it becomes the new norm. And so the point of all this is yes, we're going to talk some science today, but man, if you don't ever get to that point where you can just in your brain flip what's norm, then it's going to be very tough. Whether you're in business, whether it's sports, whatever you're doing, it's super tough to be great at anything. And I'm not extraordinary. It's those guys, I feel like they were born extraordinary. And I was definitely not. I was born in the mountains of North Carolina, super poor and not incredible. So I had to figure out something because I wanted to play football and I wanted to get out of there too. And so I had to do something that would give me the athletic performance to compete at 5'7". And so I found the weights and just, gosh, it's just stages in my life where things flip. High school, I got to the point where I could do enough I played football at Appalachian State University. Then I go to App State and we start talking about national championships. The very first day we sit down and the coach is like, every year, man, every year, we're going to go for the national title. And all of a sudden, my brain flips there. Then, after that, I go to Olympic Training Center because my strength coach at the time told me, you're not going to the NFL. So, for obvious reasons. And so, but he said, but you're incredibly strong. And so he told me about weightlifting. So I literally just drove to Colorado Springs and found a coach, because at the time there wasn't weightlifting on every corner. Now there is because of CrossFit. So hats off to CrossFit. But so I drove there 23 hours straight, got my coach, Wes Barnett, and started training. But then a year later, I was able to get invited to Olympic Training Center. And then my brain flips again. And so, but the final flip was seeing that guy, George, bench 733, and getting to go to North Georgia Barbell. And so the point, what we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to get to, is all the science in the world won't matter unless you flip that brain. And and I would challenge anybody, if you're a coach, and if your athlete comes to you and they say, I want to play in the NFL, I challenge you never to say, come on, be realistic. Because there was a guy, when I was in college, and I said, I think someday I could beat Ed Cohn's world record, which was 24:08, at 220. And at the time, I was only, totaling, because I was doing both sports at the time, and so I'd only totaled 1,700. So I'm way, way off. And that dude told me, be realistic. I was so mad. I didn't show it. He was older than me, so I was super respectful. But that drove me mad, until the day I broke it. And I called him and I said, you should be realistic, So yeah. So don't be that coach. You could say, though, what do you intend on doing to get there? That's the key. Never be the guy that tries to tell somebody they can't. Maybe, but I would, besides that, show them what it takes to get to where they want to be. And then see if they're willing to do what it takes, Maybe not. Because everybody that comes to train with me, wants to play in the NFL. This is one of my athletes right there. Or they want to, weightlifters, I want to compete in the Olympics, until they see what it takes. So it's not easy. So this is what we're going to go over today. I'm going to try to get, this is who I am. I've coached at 50, I just stopped counting. I'm not going to be the coach that says I've trained 103, Team USA athletes. So like at 50, I've done a lot, coached a lot of them. And so, but now I'm back to coaching. I have one really, really good weightlifter, and that's what I'm going to stick with. And so, but now I'm back to doing what I love. I like athletic performance. That's my love. And training the young kids and getting to mold them and watching them grow. Like this guy right here, like last weekend, I give a similar talk, and one of the coaches said, because they're watching the technique that I'm going to show you, and they're like, yeah, but all you coaches are weightlifters. I'm like, the people I'm showing you are football players. So like, no, there's, and so they were trying to give an excuse for why their athletes didn't lift that way. Look, I'm not judging them, but don't make an excuse for yourself. Just say I can't coach it. That's fine. But all right, so what can we do in the weight room? So you can get max strength, you can get explosiveness, and you can get reactive properties. And so this is what we're going to do today. We're going to tell you what's possible and how we use velocity to ensure that you're getting the intended adaptation. So you don't want to guess, and all of these things are important. Now I would say if you're coaching young kids, the first step is just a good base of being strong. And so in a lot of different ways. So if you give them, because like you can only be explosive with the force that you're capable of producing, like the maximum. So if you can produce X amount of peak force, that's what you're capable of, and you can't go beyond that. So as far as the rate of force development, high speed force development. So you got to have a good base, which this guy like 2 years ago looked like a stick, and now he's cleaning 300, squats 540. Deadlifts. He's done the trap bar deadlift of 600. He did 500 today. So he's a senior in high school. He got a full scholarship to Winston-Salem State University. So super proud of him. Yeah. Maddox. So like basic power lifts. The Olympic lifts are great for explosive strength. The biggest thing for velocity-based training is intent. Is like it gives them a number to beat. That's the biggest thing. So this is what it is. There's a lot of, this is the base stuff. And Brian Mann did a lot of this. So like, the problem with percentages is that on any given day, you can fluctuate. Your one rep max can fluctuate 18% up or down. So by giving percentages, you're at risk of like, you could say 83%, but 83 plus 18, So now you're at over 100% on any given day, and they're going to fail that. And so then you put them at risk. Velocity is, no matter how they feel, it's going to be the same. So because like 80% of their one rep max on a squat is going to be 0.5 meters per second every day, even if their squat is down 18%, which means sometimes 80% will be way less. Does that make sense? So it just keeps you from overtraining, or hurting. For heaven's sakes, if you're coaching athletes, the last thing you want to do is hurt a 17-year-old kid, Like, I want to make sure that we're getting adaptation, but just enough, the minimal effective dose, so we can keep going for a long time. So sometimes, like today, we go off script. No velocity. We just had fun. So don't get me wrong. Sometimes people mistake that because love science now that I'm not the same person. I'm still the same person.
Definitely the same person.
Still, yeah. So yeah, I know. Like today, when those guys walked in, like I was only going to do. My goal was just hitting above 400. But then when George walked in, 450 it was. And so yeah. I guess I'll never change. But then there's the rate of proceed RPE. The problem with that, and we all know, like if you ever get on Instagram and you'll see somebody deadlift, and they're like RPE 7. I'm like, son, that took you 20 seconds to come up. No, that's an RPE 12. So like this keeps them in check. So Dr. Brian Mann, some of the key takeaways he talked about is, it's with velocity, it's easy to be specific. What's your goal? Is it power, strength, or hypertrophy? You can make sure that you're hitting those qualities. Daily readiness, fatigue management is easy with velocity. So that means what we try to do is a warm up is try to do the same warm ups. And so then, say you on squat. Let's say you go 135, 225, 275, 315, and then you start. If you do those warm-ups every single week, you start to see trends. And so use a little bit of standard deviation. Next thing you know, you have a good system. And so like if normally Maddox is, when he hits 315, if it's at 0.73, and all of a sudden today it's at 0.83, we might max. It's telling me he's strong. If we get there and it's like 0.4, we might stop, So normally what I do, I'm not even sure if I wrote this in, but I'll give you this, is that if they are between 0 and 5% slower than normal, that's perfect. That's normal training. If they're between 5 to 10% slower than normal, what we're going to do is we're going to cut volume and load in half. If they're slower than 10%, we're going to take it to the house. We might do a little bodybuilding, get a little pump, and hopefully get a little acute response, endocrine response. But we're definitely not going to hurt them. And so, but the key is this: the biggest quality you can get from VBT, velocity-based training, is that immediate feedback. So when you tell an athlete like Maddox, you say he's got 405. Anyone who's squatted 405, you can either do 405 for 3 reps, or you can squat it as fast as you possibly can for 3 reps. 2 totally different movements, which is what Westside was always about. Their dynamic effort was all about taking, sub-maximal weight and pushing as hard as you can, which will then maximize the motor units that you recruit, like the muscle fibers that maximize. And it maximizes the rate of which you recruit, which is athletic performance. So going beyond it. So now we've gone, luckily I've been a big part of this too with GymWare. We've gone a little bit beyond it. Yes, we can do force velocity profiles, which is simply this, is that, they do 50, 60, 70, 80, 85, 90, maybe 93%. And now we have a profile, and we do that a couple of times, and we start to get those, we start to develop fatigue management. We start to develop what qualities do they need to work on. But now we can also do the dynamic strength index and the reactive. What that means for you is this: that the dynamic strength index will tell me, does this athlete need to be focused more on explosiveness, like the Olympic lifts and jumps, or do they need to do just get strong because they're super fast but weak, or are they somewhere in the middle? So we've done that, and responding to the data, we have protocols now that are easy to implement. It's easy to maintain those. And the best part is it's easy to monitor trends versus completely stopping, to retest every 12 weeks. You don't want to do that. If you wait 12 weeks to test your athletes to see if they've gotten better, what if they haven't? I know right away, is my plan working or not? Within 4 to 6 weeks, I see are they trending the way I intend or not? If they're not, we're going to flip right there. Because they come to me to get better, not to guess. Dynamic strength index, simply put, anybody who wants this, if you just email me, travis@riseendorsports.com, I will send you this and a lot of other stuff too. But with Ryan Grimsland, here's a perfect example. He's what you call like a kangaroo, perfectly powerful. I qualify people, either they're a cheetah, which means they're fast, incredibly fast but weak. They're not going to beat a lion. And then there's a kangaroo who's powerful, And then there's the gorillas. They're really not slow, but I called it gorilla. Maybe I should call it like an elephant. But, but strong but slow. And then you can decide what to do with them. Force velocity profiles, that just tells you how to do it. There's the starting strength, speed strength. It used to drive me crazy listening to Louis talk about these things. I'm like, what do you mean, speed strength? But now we know. And by now there's so many velocity-based training units that are affordable, anyone can do it. Back then it was only $10, and it was thousands of dollars. I'm like, I'm a poor powerlifter, but now almost anyone can afford one. The reactive strength index, for anyone who cares, even for, if you're an adult just trying to be healthy, reactive properties are this. It's like when your foot strikes the ground, do you take that energy and transfer it down the track? Or do you lose it because your joints are not strong enough? So being reactive, when somebody is super springy, that's your Michael Jordans, that's your Usain Bolts, those are people who do things and they make it look easy and it just blows your mind, you know. So I had a chance to work with the Jamaicans until COVID hit. And so I got to see Johan Blake, which is the second fastest human of all time, and got to work with him. It's just so extraordinary to watch him put his foot in the ground and absolutely lose zero energy. It's like, it's an insane thing. But being able to measure the properties and decide that they need to work on it is awesome, because there's ways to make people more reactive. Plenty of ways now, you know, so which we'll talk about in a minute. Oh wait, I guess I should. This is Ryan. This is how you know somebody is super reactive. But here, this is a 24 inches into a 39-inch vertical, but it only took him 0.35 seconds to get off the ground, which is like, I've never seen it. You know, it's 24 inches. You know, yes, 39 inches happens, but getting off the ground in 0.35 and then going 39, I've not seen it besides him. And he's got a 42-inch standing legit vertical too. So that's just off of box is way different. A few more uses, like with football, you can establish a minimum velocity threshold, which means I know that most people are going to fail squatting at 0.3. So if your athletes get to 0.4, they're getting close. And so we never miss that way. So, you know, and that's, if you're training these guys, like, you don't want to miss all the time. There's a time and a place to max out, but not all the time. So now if I want to max out, I can. There's also, you know, you hear eccentric training. But if you're not measuring it, you know, you're just talking. And then bar path, it gets buy-in from these guys. And then a leaderboard is something that we haven't done, but we're going to do. So there'll be a big screen up, and they'll be able to see each other's lifts and how fast they're lifting. So now there can all be, even though Maddox might be stronger than everybody, if we go pound for pound, so the little guy can battle him, and so it's fun. All right, so make a profile. That's step one, and you know, put your guys in those different categories. So DSI will tell you gorilla, kangaroo, cheetah. Basically, a DSI is this: you take a squat and you work up to a max, and you find out their peak force. If you have GymAware, you know, they do that for you. But if you don't, email me and I'll tell you how to do the equation. But you take the peak force from the squat, peak force from a jump, and so you take the squat divided by the jump, and you see that's how you get your DSI. And then there's on the slide you see it's like if you're between like 0.6 and 0.8, you're the kangaroo. If you're above 0.8, you're the cheetah. If you're below the 0.6, you're the gorilla. And then you can get the RSI will tell you the reactive properties. And then finally, step 3, you set your auto-regulation and daily readiness. It's super easy. So in summary, like, you know, once, you know, in your first week, you profile your athletes, you can divide them into kangaroo, because, you know, it's really hard to individualize it. If anybody here trains big groups, like even whether you're doing CrossFit or your athletes or whatever, if you got a group of 30 people, it's hard to individualize programming. But I can easily put them in different groups. They can be doing the exact same thing. They can all be squatting. One group can be using squats with bands, like somewhere the normal percentages you might see at Westside Barbell. One group, the cheetahs, will probably just be going heavier, and the gorillas might be going more bands, less weight, and going fast. They're all squatting. So you can do that at scale. Matter of fact, Louisville is one of the ones that are starting to use the system. So, and they're not the only ones. It's just I know that those people. So then another big thing, if you have, this is a subjective questionnaire. If you have your athletes fill those out and you see that one day they come in and they're way slower than normal, I can go look at the questionnaire, and there's going to be questions like stress outside of the gym. How much are you experiencing? And if I see a big number, you know, if I see that they're saying I'm stressed outside the gym and they're slow that day, I can ask them what's wrong. And if anybody's ever, you know, looks at, you know, Instagram or all these things with people right now, they're struggling with mental health, it opens that up to talk. Because if you just ask, how you feeling today? Everyone's going to say, fine. But if I see it and I see it, I know something's wrong, and they're telling me something's wrong, I can have a conversation with one of my young kids and hopefully prevent something terrible. And so that goes way beyond being amazing. I care more about that than I care about anything else. That nothing happens to one of my athletes is more important than anything. And if they're getting bullied, if they're struggling with their relationships, if their mom and dad at home is beating them, like that means more to me than how good they get as an athlete. I want to protect my kids, so. Appreciate it. Trying to shake it off. All right. So these are the possible adaptations in the weight room. Perfect. So if you guys like coach, if anybody here coaches athletes, or if you coach, if you coach yourself, this is what's at. If you want to get strong, these are some of the movements I recommend. Multi-joint movements. If we want to do rate of force development, it's really hard to beat the Olympic list. So, but you don't have to use them. And I will say this: if you can't teach them the way, with really good form, do a derivative. Do a clean pull, a snatch pull, and there's some really good literature that says those work just as fine, But the key is pulling like sub-maximal weight as fast as you can. It's still pretty heavy. I promise you, Ryan Grimsland, my top weightlifter, that guy has snatched 253 pounds. He weighs 160 at over 0.4 meters per second. If anyone knows anything about track and field, that's moving. Even after 10 meters, he's moving faster than they are. It's insane. Anyone tells you can't move the same way in the gym that people can on the track, they obviously don't know what they're doing, which is fine. I'm sure they're really good at training track, but don't tell me what I'm doing because I measure. And the ground contact times, if you do depth jumps and drop jumps properly, you're at 0.2, the ground contact time. You'll always hear a track coach say, you guys, it's not the same, nothing will transfer. It's not true at all. So luckily we measure, so all this bullshit arguing can end now. So that's why normally no one will try to argue with me because they know it's not a good thing. And so then you got the reactive strength properties, things you can do, posterior chain, we all know that that's a good thing. Core and hip stability, super important. Tendon stiffness, super important. If your tendons are stiff when your foot strikes the ground, that's part of being reactive. Specific strength, like doing sled sprints, hill sprints, something that's specific to running. And then you got your eccentric, you want to learn to train when you get really, really good, and your athletes say they're squatting 2 times body weight, they're developed. Now you can get specific. And so when someone's running at top speed, max speed, when they're at max speed, they're bringing their leg through, they want to be able to slow that lower leg so it doesn't overstride and strike. That's a braking effect. What you want to be able to slow the lower leg so it can strike under their hip. So you got to really have a strong hamstring because that limb is moving so quickly, The other, let me ask, this is a guess. When they measured the fastest sprinters in the world, trying to find which muscle separates them from the normal human, which muscle do you think was found to be the strong one? That was the most important for sprinting. Anybody else want to guess? Who? What? Calf? What? I can't hear you. What?
Achilles?
Nope.
Psoas glutes?
Yes. The hip flexor. Yes. The hip flexor. You know why? Because when it's fully lengthened, they had this incredibly large hip flexor that was contracting at really high rates because it brought it back. And it also helped with the stretch reflex called the cross extensor reflex. When you fall, this leg stiffens and it brings this leg forward. That's important to sprinting too. And so the hip flexor is actually one of the muscles that helps to trigger that over and over and over when you're sprinting. I know, hip flexor. Who would have thought?
Josh, what's your best hip flexor exercise? What do you think's your best?
That's a great question. So I would do something where it's fully lengthened. So standing upright, if you the cable machine, hooking that to your leg, at first, bringing it back, but not just bringing it back. Bringing it back with your heel as close to your butt as possible. Just like it would, when you're at top speed, you're cycling. And like you want this leg to fold up and come forward and come as close to your butt. Like the really good guys, like you're saying, it's right by their butt, because then it's easier to bring the knee through. That's just that whole angular velocity. When you shorten that moment of inertia, then it can go as fast as possible. So, but like that one fully lengthened. There's another one too, laying on a box with pulling this knee to your chest. And then now this leg is fully lengthened and putting a kettlebell on the foot too. And you really don't even have to pull it way up, just like a little ways, because all it is a very fast contraction and then it's momentum. So, quick look at specificity. This is what I was talking about. So if you want to look at, let me come there so I can see better. So here is what happens. At the 10 meter mark, like an amateur is at 0.3. The elite's at 5.5. So, elite's at 5.5, the amateur's at 4.5, so is Ryan. He's even got a 5.49 with 115 kilograms. So what I'm saying is if he can move his body weight plus 253 pounds, which is like, what is that? So he weighs 160. So it's probably 1.5 times his body weight, and he's moving it at 5.49 meters per second. If you don't think that's specific, you're not smart. Sorry. But and even Verkhoshansky, I'm sure, who here has read the book Super Training? Anyone? It's a good one. And so he even says most weightlifters defy the force-velocity relationship, meaning like a lot of times when they get to 80%, when they're really good, the velocity will stay the same or might even get faster as they add weight, because it's the movement itself creates that intent, because you got to get under it. And so you're going to move fast because you want to develop enough speed to get under the bar. So, and then like ground contact time too. So this is the 0.3, the 0.35, 0.25, 0.3. So we're even hitting 0.18 several times. We're doing drop jumps. And so like the ground contact time is super important. And so having that stiff reactive joint is important. But you can do that. Here we go. Here is a ground contact times at 0.26, 0.31. So, and this is from a 24-inch box, and that's a girl. So like, you can do it. You can do lots of cool stuff in the gym. And these are averages throughout the world. Even in the clean, you're at 2.5 with maximum loads, max loads. And then snatch 3.1 with maximum loads. So if you're going 75%, boom, you're way above it. So much for that argument. Out the window now. So transfer training. Whenever this is how things transfer. If we stop here, it's fine, because this is what's important. Things transfer. What you do out there transfers at the velocity of which you do it, at the range of motion which you do it. So like, some people will say squat all the way down. Some people would say squat 2 parallel, above parallel. And when they ask me which is the best, it depends. It depends. If you want to train, I believe this. Year round, you should go full depth on something, because the joint only gets nourishment at a full range of motion with synovial fluid. So if you don't go full range somewhere, eventually that joint will tear down. And so you don't want that. But when they're starting to peak for max velocities, you just look at the angle of which they are when they're sprinting. It's a very big joint angle. And so that's what you want to train at. So sometimes. And then it's also based on the contraction type, eccentric. Remember I told you the hamstrings got to be really strong. It is second, the hamstring, very important. But the hip flexor, I wouldn't even say, but that's just the one that they found it's hard to say which is important, because it would depend on the athletes. Those two are the hip flexor and the hamstring. But important the way that when you're sprinting. So hamstrings need to be super strong eccentrically, and then the hip flexor needs to be really strong concentrically, meaning shortening, eccentrically lengthening. So, and then the body part, this is silly, but of course if you're doing chest, your chest will get stronger. I don't know why they have to tell you that. But it's also based on the external resistance. Corey Gregory, I think he's the most what's the word I'm looking for? innately understands things. He doesn't even have to see the book. He just gets it. Like I followed him now 2 different things he's done. The squat every day, I thought at one time was crazy. I would have told you he is crazy. And then I tried it. And I was crazy. And so he was right. And then he starts doing the things with bands. And I've learned at that point, though, I didn't say it twice. I didn't say he's crazy. I said, let me try it. And that was good. Because like using bands will help you to move faster on the way down and up. So no matter the load being equal, you'll move faster with bands because the bands pull, faster than gravity. If you only use the bar, you're only going to be at 9.81 meters per second squared. That's the acceleration. At bands, you can go faster than gravity now. So he was right again. And then vector, meaning like, rotational, horizontal, like vertical, lateral. So if you train lateral, you get stronger laterally. That makes sense. And then the strength endurance continuum. If you do high reps, you get good at high reps. Muscular endurance, if you do low, you get stronger at low. Movement pattern, so you want to be similar. And then the force production, meaning the rate and the magnitude being how much force, rate, how quickly you develop it. And then the muscle fiber recruitment, same thing. So you get better at the rate and at synchronization when you do it, and the biomechanical adaptations, they all get better. So example, if you do speed, you're going to get better at creatine phosphate levels, glycolytic enzymes. Anyway, you just get better at those. What's happening inside your body, you get better at doing those chemical properties, all right?
Travis, don't feel rushed. You can use some of my time. Mine will be short. I'm learned a lot from you, so I'm ready.
I need to read more books, bro. That's not listening to your ass.
I'd rather shorten mine up.
Well, that really, P.S. if you want to debate, you should probably read literature that you're referencing. This is a guy, one guy did try to debate me about the Olympic lifts. He said, I read Super Training, Verkhoshansky, doesn't even like the Olympics. The Olympic lifts said they're not transferable. I'm like, did you really read it? That's his quote from Verkhoshansky. So, reading it says option. The option B is characterized by many actions in track and field events. Olympic weightlifting, which involves lifting heavy loads rapidly, appears to contradict evidence that velocity decreases with load because weightlifting is ballistic and relies on quick movement of the lifter under the bar. It may be concluded that powerlifting is essentially strength generating, while weightlifting is maximum power generating in nature. Funny, you better be careful. If you're going to debate me, make sure you really have read what you're saying, because I have read. So,
Travis, can you explain supercompensation? Where when we go, because a lot of times the way we program, we'll do 3 weeks with a band wave, and then the 4th week we're taking the bands off. And all my kids went through that because we went, a doubled up orange for speed. We had the incremental weight for speed. Week 3 we went double reds, overload.
Yeah.
Week 4, some of the guys come to squatted today, and they're flying through the top of the movement.
Sure.
So you can explain that. I think that'd be super helpful.
It's super important. No matter what you're doing, you should have supercompensation comes into play. It could come into play every 4 to 6 weeks if you're blocked, and it should. As far as I'm concerned, because what you do, you really purposely overload the body, and it starts to struggle a little bit. When he's starting on that week 3 to put the 2 reds, the body is really starting to struggle, and it's really starting to break down. So now it's like overcompensating for that. And then all of a sudden you drop the volume and the load down. And so while the body's still over responding, you're underperforming. And then all of a sudden you get the supercompensation. So it's just tricking the body into recovering more than it needs to. So that's the simplest way to put it. There's definitely the chemical properties that are happening, like the body is struggling to get the creatine phosphate back into the muscles. There's the calcium, the body's struggling to get more calcium into the muscle, which is how you move. If you don't have calcium, you die. So it gets better. All these chemical reactions. And so by beating them down and going heavier and heavier and heavier and harder and harder and harder, they get better and better and better. But if you keep going, if you don't have that week where you deload and then go heavy, then eventually they break down. And so it's a fine line. It's he just intuitively gets it when to do it too. Most people, I've seen the problem, let me end with this, is that the problem with the guys in the science who've never done anything super, super hard, they just never will be able to get through to an athlete. They just won't. Because if you haven't done things incredible like Corey's done, or like breaking world records, you can still be a great coach. But if you don't get out there in life, and it doesn't mean you have to be a world record powerlifter. You just got to do tough things in life and overcome hard things. And if you don't, though, how are you going to be able to look your athlete in the eye and say, you need to do this? I didn't, but you should. You just won't. So you can be as smart as you want. So it won't matter. I've seen so many amazing coaches who don't know shit about science, but they just get it, man. They get it. You got to work hard, then you got to relax a little bit, and then you go hard. So same thing in business. Like, Corey works Monday through Friday super, super hard. He chills on the weekends, super compensation, boom, comes back. So like,
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening.
yeah, so like,
More on Friday.
so, but if you, I challenge anyone who ever wants to be a coach, if you don't do super tough, incredible things, you'll be lacking. You won't be able to say the same things to your athletes like I can. But if you do know the science and you've done it yourself, you can say amazing things. I can look him in the eye when he misses 300 clean and say, I know you can do this. And he believes me because he knows I've done way more than that. He knows I know. And he sees other athletes. Luckily in our gym, there's multiple people cleaning over 400 the right way. No straps, none of that. And so he's seen it, he knows it's possible, and he knows I'm telling him the truth. And so if you haven't, am I really going to believe you? Probably not. I'm like, what the hell do you know about it? So do it all. I recommend in life, if you want to be great at business, you better have done the thing, Yes, study it and get better at it. But you better have done the thing. Same with being a coach. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say today. So.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was